Good day, sir. We are the group three, and today we are going to discuss our case analysis, which is the case number 8. John is legally married to Nora, and one day Nora caught John having a sexual activity with another woman named Gloria. However, John loved Nora so much that he really wants her forgiveness. In line of his being sorry of this action, he cut off his sexual organ, and seeing this, Nora got even furious and cursed John and his action. Hence, John was left frustrated and broken-hearted at the same time. The agent of the given case analysis was John, and the act done by the agent was he cut off his sexual organ as a sign of his remorse about his cheating incident with another woman. Therefore, John's actions are considered as human acts.
Is this case moral according to consequentialism? Based on the utilitarian framework, consequentialism will focus on the happiness of the majority and minimize hurt or difficulty. Assessing the situation, based on the principle of consequentialism, the act done by John, which is cutting off his sexual organ for the reason of seeking forgiveness from Nora, leads to the negative consequences that he faced, and this makes his action immoral. In this case, the self castration of John ended in a negative outcome, which only increased Nora's rage against him. Therefore, from a consequentialist point of view, the action taken by John resulted greatly in a negative consequences. Since the intended positive outcome was not met, it could not be considered moral. Is this case moral according to the ontology? Following the rules and duties disregarding the consequences that might happen is the moral obligation of the ontology. The act of self castration done by John for the forgiveness he needed as an outcome violates the moral rules against self harm as well as treating himself with respect and dignity. So, therefore, John's action of castrating himself is immoral from the ontological perspective, as it does not agree with the universal moral rules and duties.
For number 6, is this case moral according to virtue ethics? The situation is immoral according to virtue ethics, as it reflects a lack of practical wisdom and temperance. John's drastic action of self harm demonstrates an extreme and irrational response rather than a balanced and virtuous one. Virtue ethics emphasizes the development of good character traits and rational decision making, neither of which is evident in John's reaction to his infidelity. For question number 7, is this good according to natural law? According to natural law, this case is not good because it goes against the natural purpose of and integrity of the human body. Natural law theory, rooted in the philosophy of Thomas Aquinas, holds that moral actions are those that align with the natural purposes of human faculties. John's self-castration disrupts the natural function of his reproductive organ and does not contribute to the rational flourishing of human being, making it contrary to natural law principles.
Is this good according to divine command theory? Divine command theory is an ethical theory that is the basis of the morality of an action through God's command, and what is good or bad will be based on God's will. So John's action is considered as not good in divine command theory, even though he repented his sins, which is good, but it is still considered as immoral in God's command, which is having a sexual activity with another woman even though he is legally married. Self harm also adds to his immorality since our body is considered as a temple of or gift from God, and he created something that harms himself as a sign of his repentance. Even though John repented and was sincere when he asked for forgiveness, his actions will still be considered as not good in the divine command theory.
Is this good according to legalism? John's self castration and infidelity is not good according to legalism. Self castration is an extreme and irrational conduct that has no place in the legal or social order. Infidelity can be subject to legal action under various circumstances. Is this good according to emotivism? This is not good according to emotivism. Nora's anger and John's despair evoke negative emotion. Emotivism holds the moral judgments that express emotional response rather than objective truths.
So, what makes this case moral? The moral aspect in this case is John's remorse for his mistake. His desire to ask Nora's forgiveness can be seen as a good act. Acknowledging one's mistake or admitting to it and genuinely regretting mistakes can pave the way for moral growth and reconciliation. Next, what makes this case immoral on the other hand? There are two moral aspects in this situation. First is the infidelity, wherein it is immoral to have any sexual activity or any emotional attachment to someone else while being married to your husband or to your wife. Next is the self harm. Self mutilation has never been a healthy way to deal with guilt or even seek for forgiveness. Um, Although it is John's way of apologizing to Nora and showing remorse, aside from being irrational, self harm is universally understood as an immoral act.
For the part two of the case analysis, our research case is an 11-year-old girl tragically lost her life on Valentine's Day in Badyangan, Iloilo, after being accidentally shot by an assailant targeting her relatives. The incident unfolded when the suspect, April Jan Vale, engaged in a dispute with the girl's family members, culminating in violence after Vale allegedly damaged their vehicle. Despite an initial attempt at resolution, Vale remained dissatisfied and later pursued the family to their residence, where he fired multiple shots. The girl was among those present and suffered fatal gunshot wounds to her head and neck. Vale fled the scene but was subsequently apprehended at a sibling's house. Despite denying involvement, he faces murder charges based on a witness testimony linking him to the crime.
Overall, we have considered this situation as an immoral act, emphasizing to the actions done by Mr. Valle, the one who fired shots at his neighbor's house, which resulted in the death of a young girl. This moral judgment can be justified through consequentialism and deontology. In a consequentialist perspective, the tragic death of an 11-year-old girl due to Mr. Valle's unintentional but immoral action highlights the consequences of his behavior. So, why is it immoral from a consequentialist perspective? Because consequentialism judges the morality of an action based on its consequences. In this situation, the negative impact of the girl's death on her family was being emphasized. Despite placing direct involvement in the dispute between Mr. Valle and her relatives, the girl became a victim of his action, leading to a crime for which he is responsible. Next, for a deontologist perspective, despite placing direct involvement in the dispute between Mr. Valle and her relatives, the girl became a victim of his actions, leading to a crime for which he is responsible. From a deontological perspective, Mr. Valle's engagement in the dispute causing property damage to his neighbors and ultimately resulting in the death of the child are all considered immoral acts. The agent committed an action that is universally accepted as an evil act. According to Immanuel Kant, we must do what is good and do it for goodness sake and nothing else, not even for self satisfaction, rewards, or any external influences.
An 11-year-old girl was tragically died as a result of Mr. Valle's unintended but immoral behavior. for which he is responsible for it. Shooting that took the life of an 11-year-old girl was morally unacceptable because of the consequence. Consequentialism holds the action morality is defined by its result. In this instance, the death of suffering brought about by the act serves to emphasize its negative effect to her family. The argument, violent nature, and the unchangeable tragedy indicates a serious situation. It serves as a reminder of an importance of considering the consequences of our actions, even if when it is unintentional.
In my opinion, it is evident that murder is an immoral sin, and Mr. Vallier had committed a heinous crime, considering that the kid he killed did not have direct involvement in the dispute between him and the kid's relatives. Even without the intention to kill the kid, his behavior led to a crime in which a life was lost. In the lens of consequentialism, a conduct or a deed will be considered flawed based on its consequences. And the fact that Mr. Vallier was arrested at a sibling's house was more than enough to be evidence that what he did was wrong and immoral.
For me, the action of the agent, which is Mr. Valle, is entirely unacceptable. Although he did not intend to shoot the young, innocent girl, and it might be seen as an unforeseen event resulting from his action, he should still be responsible for it, following the principle of the indirect voluntariness. Furthermore, if we try to look through the lens of deontology or the duty ethics, the action of Mr. Valle in firing shots at the house where the young girl and her family lives clearly violated the duty to avoid harming others. So even if he had a dispute with the girl's family, resorting to violence was morally impermissible. And the most important is, killing is universally understood as an immoral act. That is why I can say that Mr. Valle's action was entirely immoral.
So, in this case, the violation of moral rules like courtesy toward life, the right to property, and the obligation to settle issues in the right manner is what the agent's action disobeyed. The assailant's action condemns the inherent wrongness of violating moral duties. It is considered an immoral act from a deontological perspective for Mr. Valle's action, which is engaging in dispute, causing their neighbor's property damage, and the resulting in the death of the child. Moreover, judging the morality of his action based on whether it shows virtues or character traits, Mr. Valle's action, instead of exhibiting virtues, chose to convey illicit behaviors such as brutality, lack of self control, and unfairness. Still, the action of the agent is considered immoral as virtue ethics in criticizing the vicious character traits his doings reflect.
Mr. Valle's action is considered immoral since he killed someone who is innocent. Even though killing the girl was an accident and unintentional, he still is responsible and committed a crime. If we base it on the principle of indirect voluntariness, he does not directly intend to kill the girl, and his intention was to shoot the family members. Because of that shooting, he was able to kill the girl without the intention, which would still be considered as immoral. On the other hand, if we base it in deontological ethics, which focuses on the rightness or wrongness of an action rather than the consequence, it is still considered wrong because of killing a person. Mr. Valle's action is considered immoral in whatever ethical principle and theory basis. Killing will never be considered moral, even though it is unintentional.